He remembers that night on the river as a perfect black hole. Not quite what Stephen Hawking et al. Have given the world, but as close to nothing as it gets on the planet. Starlight went down the first time, fell without refraction straight through that wet event horizon. He wonders how matter, unheavenly bodies like a pair of skin and bone kids in a canoe, kept making a splash, didn't get swallowed up too. Yes, the absence tugged at the paddles, gurgling like a baby. You had to hold tight, push against, pull right through it. He remembers they ended up gasping like fish in air. Just when they set paddles aside, forgot about the progress upriver, decided to ride wherever the water remembered to go. That he doesn't recall. He does remember the glide, momentum transporting something inside, and maybe an old man's memory, laughter playing out in the dark. A stone like a half-moon skipping across the imperfections of night. The water's dark matter wrinkling before, spreading out from the prow. That's how the canoe resurfaces now, X-rays from his head's singularity. He wonders at the two of them, or any earthbound by flesh and the knowledge that they will never move quicker than light, not hesitating to canoe rivers of the infinite night.
Hello, friends. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight to pay tribute to our friend Daniel David Moses. You will see during this tribute photos of Daniel with friends, of actors performing his plays, paintings of him by his friend Eric Ladelfa, recorded tributes by friends, performances by CIT alumni, and recordings of Daniel himself reciting his own poetry to music composed by David Delirium. I want to thank Ed Roy for his direction and for helping me get this dream tribute from a dream to an actual event. I'm so grateful to all the artists who contributed: Lisa Crowmarty, Theresa Cutknife, Sam Twinn, and Jeremy Proulx. Miigwech to those who offered their heartfelt tributes: Phelan Johnson, Eric Ladelfa, Janny Lozon, Carol Roundtree, Lib Spry, and last but not least, Shelley Nero. Daniel David Moses was born on February 18, 1952. A registered Delaware, he was raised on a dairy farm in 6 Nations of the Grand River. He was a poet, a playwright, essayist, and a professor. He was, of course, very much an Aquarius, but most importantly, he was my friend and a dear friend to many. I met Daniel in 1990, and in September 1991, Maury Mumford cast me as Beauty in his play for young audiences, Dreaming Beauty. And we danced and toured across southern Ontario all that fall and winter. Not long after that, Daniel and I became friends, and for several years, we also served as board members together for Cahoots Theatre projects and for Native Earth Performing Arts. Like many, I had the privilege to also be an actor for him as he developed his plays, and I'm forever grateful that he asked me to work on several workshops of his last play, Crazy Dave Goes to Town. I am and always was a devoted admirer of his plays and his poetry. In 2001, I celebrated all that I admired about Daniel and presented him with the prestigious Toronto Arts Award, the Herald Award. Okay, not so prestigious, but it is fun. It's fun to get the Herald Award. Daniel was a good friend to me, and he helped me in more ways than I can say here. He did simple things. Like when I was a young single mother, he insisted on taking me out to social events, plays, reminding me that I also needed the company of adults. One quiet New Year's Eve gathering, I was surprised to be sitting next to Margaret Atwood. He didn't warn me that she would be there. He was funny that way. When I became artistic director at the Center for Indigenous Theatre in 2003, Daniel made clear his commitment to helping young Indigenous artists, and he did so in many ways. When he lived in Toronto, he made sure to come to all our showcases and our year-end productions. After he moved to Kingston, he came in person when he could, but when he couldn't, he would send friends to report back to him. He donated generously to CIT with his time and his pocketbook. He believed in helping young Indigenous artists in every way he could. He left us too soon. It was July 13th, 2020, a warm summer day in Tekaronto in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. He left us, and we miss him. Please enjoy our tribute to the magnificent Daniel David Moses, known affectionately as DDM.
Lena! Lena! I got something to say.
What is it now?
Do you know what you're doing?
Sister, I can pack my own suitcase.
Lena, that's not what I'm talking about.
I should have kept quiet.
Lena, this isn't very bright.
He never loved you, Boo. Never.
Oh, stop it. I don't care about Johnny.
That's good, I suppose, if it's true. But it must be hard. You've always been so jealous of me.
Lena, I'm not jealous.
You can't help being born first. You'll understand when you grow up.
There's nothing to be jealous of. Boy, is there nothing.
Oh, sister, is that how you feel?
Lena, I care about you.
I hope it's true. I don't want to leave you mad at me.
Well, Lena, I'm not mad.
Then you don't mind about this.
Hey, that sweater's mine.
I want to borrow it in case it's cold.
Auntie sent that to me.
If you don't want me to take it, just say so.
So. You got sweaters of your own.
Maybe it won't be cold.
Lena, I'm sorry. Come on. Sit down a moment and talk with me.
I don't need the sweater.
Come on, take it. and talk to me. If you're going away, I won't see you for a long time. I'm gonna miss my sister.
I don't need it, Boo. Thanks anyway.
Tell me about Johnny. What are you gonna do if he's not there?
Boo, don't hurt yourself.
Lena, I'm not hurting myself.
You believe that, don't you? How'd you get so tough? You must be disappointed.
Disappointed? Well, okay, disappointed. Well, why shouldn't I be disappointed? He was my friend, and off you go and screw around with him.
Sister, we couldn't help it. It happens.
As if you would know. If you hadn't been boozing it up all the time.
He wasn't boozing it up. Not when he was with me. He didn't need to booze it up when he was with me.
Now, wait a minute, Lena.
You think we didn't talk about you? About us? We did. I felt funny about it, going out with him. Till he told me how you teased him.
What is it? What did he say?
Coming on bright-eyed and smiling, and only letting him hold your hand.
I wasn't ready to get serious. He knew that.
You weren't ready. You're nothing but a tease. A cock tease. That's what he said. Walking out with him like you cared.
Walking is safer than parking. And I did like him. I did. He knew a lot of interesting stuff.
Interesting stuff. He was interested in you.
Stuff about the old folks out west. You know, old stories.
I know. He told me how you bugged him, asking him about those stupid stories.
Look, Lena, he didn't mind telling me. I mean, some of them stories are real comical. He liked telling them.
Why can't you learn the lesson, sister? You can't treat a man like a book.
Well, there's more to life than fucking around.
As if you would know, Boo. If you don't use it, you lose it.
That's Johnny talking, isn't it?
That's the interesting stuff he knew. Not your fairy tale bullshit.
Lena, there's this one he told me about. It's like right now almost.
Sister, you'll end up an old maid.
It's a coyote story about when his wife died. Well, Coyote tried to bring her back from the land of the dead.
Boo, this is real life. And Johnny's a real man. A flesh and blood man. You should try flesh and blood.
Johnny really liked this story. I think it was his favorite.
I never heard of it. We don't need your stories. They got nothing to do with us. We're not living in the bush no more.
Lena, wait, you gotta listen.
Get off the suitcase, Boo.
I'm trying to help you.
Then get off. Get off! Now I know why Mama calls you her cross. I can't find my chain. Yeah, the one Johnny gave me. Did you hide it again? Did you?
No!
I'll find it anyway. You can't outsmart me, you little brat.
Oh, Lena! Lena, I tell you, Coyote and his wife were living together once.
Dan was a dear friend and colleague for almost 30 years. A quiet man, a master listener. But when he spoke, you listened. I had the pleasure and honor of directing his seminal play Almighty Voice and His Wife twice, the world premiere at GCTC in 1991 and then again in 2017 at Theatre Kingston. I was and am amazed by the depth of his analysis of colonialism, the beauty and cleverness of his language, his use of humor as a critical tool, all wrapped up in a brilliant theatrical concept. He was a dream to have in the rehearsal hall. He was helpful, supportive, had great solutions, and his distinct laughter would tell us that we'd found the right way to solve a particular moment. He loved going to his own plays. He was delighted by the production at Soul Pepper that was directed by the original white girl, Jenny Lauzon. Playwright, poet, dramaturge, essayist, scholar, a wonderful human being. When he retired, I missed our regular meals together with great talk and satisfying silences. The last time I saw him, just before COVID, he told me he was working on new poems and a play about the peacemaker. A brilliant writer, wry, funny, caring, sweet, a man of grace.
They were happy. Happy till his wife got sick. So very sick she died. And Coyote got lonesome, Lena. I tell you, so lonesome he didn't do a thing but cry. Oh, he cried for his wife. And Lena, you know Johnny said that a spirit came from the land of the dead to Coyote and asked him, Coyote, say, do you miss that woman? I can take you where she is, but you gotta do just exactly as I say. So of course Coyote says, yeah, sure, I'll do exactly as you say. Only take me where my woman is. Once it got dark, Coyote could see them, the dead people. They were just getting up, having their breakfast. It's like they're awake when we're dreaming, living new lives while we're dead to the world. They had their own horses and food and clothes and everything. But everything, themselves included, was made out of darkness, out of bits of shadow. Coyote soon recognized many people he used to know. So many of his old pals around the fire there, he almost forgot about looking for his wife in that lodge big as night. They walked along for a long while over the plain, Coyote and the spirit. Then the spirit said, oh, look, that cloud of dust must be a herd of horses, eh? So Coyote agreed. Yes, there were a whole lot of horses. Even though you know he didn't see a one. Later that day, though the spirit knew Coyote couldn't see nothing, he said, wow, look at those berries. Let's have a bite before we go on. Just do like I do. So Coyote watched the spirit and imitated it. You know, putting his hand to his mouth as if he was eating berries, smacking his lips as if he had a mouthful of sweet juice, as if he was being fed. Coyote only hears them folks whispering at first, and then really talking. All of them living their lives in the land of the dead. And the ghost of his wife? She'd been there all along, sitting by his side. She's cooking him a rabbit stew or something for his supper. So, Coyote's spending every night there in the big lodge of the Shadow People. With his wife there too, all his old gang. A wild time it is. They talk and laugh and eat and play games for hours. Poker, probably. And every day for days in the daytime, he has to wait. Sitting out there in that desert place on the plain, all alone in the hot sun, almost dying too with nothing to drink, just so he could visit for another night with his wife. The spirit guide finally said, hey, Coyote, time has come. You can go now. Leave the land of the dead. You can take your wife home with you, back to the land of the living. I warn you though, don't touch her. She has to be holy flesh again. I'll do exactly as you say, Coyote said. It went right through his head. So Coyote and his wife, they headed off across the plain. And at first, she was nothing but shadow. At night, when they made camp, they would sit and talk about their life to come. And Coyote would look at his wife, and there were lights in her black hair, and even in the shadows where her eyes were. Coyote sat up in the dark and reached out. He pulled his wife into his arms and kissed her. And Coyote's wife turned into smoke, back to the land of the dead. Imagine how Coyote cried out when his wife went like a light out of his arms. Can you imagine that? Do you know how long Coyote tried to find his way back again to the land of the dead and buried? It was so dumb. I mean, it was right there under old Coyote's coyote nose. But he couldn't find it again without a spirit guide to save his soul. Ghosts don't come to those who can't keep their word. He ended up sitting in an empty place on the plain, pretending under the hot sun to be eating berries and watching horses. He tried to taste the sweetness in his mouth. But when night came down, it was just dust. He never did see that woman again of his in his life.
Hey, my name's Phelan Johnson. I'm Mohawk and Tuscarora from Six Nations Bear Clan. I am a playwright. I also work in audio. I have a podcast and a radio show with CBC right now. And Daniel David Moses was incredibly important to me as a storyteller. When I was quite young, when I was 16 or 17, there was a theater troupe starting up on the res, and Daniel was going to be one of the playwrights involved. It eventually fell through, but I just remember getting to meet him when I was that young and just kind of knowing that this guy was a big deal. Years later, in 2014, he nominated me for an Emerging Indigenous Arts Award through the OAC. And at the time, I didn't really understand what the award was or the importance of it until the day that I accepted the award, standing beside Daniel. And I remember him speaking so highly of me and my work. And it sort of hit me in that moment that I wasn't supposed to be in the position that I was working in administration at the time, and I realized that I needed to be pursuing something more creative, because if Daniel David Moses thought that I could write, then that probably meant that I should be writing. Daniel always came to all the shows, everyone's shows, and he was always sort of just like a quiet, reassuring presence. And I'm going to miss seeing him at those shows, but I feel incredibly blessed to have gotten to see Almighty Voice and his wife one more time when Soul Pepper produced it a couple of years ago. It's my favorite play. This is the copy I've been carrying around with me for years. I've had this since I was probably about 17 or 18 years old. It's the first contemporary Indigenous play that I really just loved, and it's always been with me. And I know wherever Daniel is, I'm sure he's coming to all the shows, because that was Daniel.
How full of herself the moon is tonight, as she's been before, I'm sure. But this time, who can ignore her? Look at that look. Is that why I'm awake? What shook me out of bed into the air? I can't remember. That look clears thought from my head the same way it did every star and cloud from the nameless city I saw in the sky. The moons now become the night's population of one, and I, down here in the town, also go it alone. Thanks to the way I shy away from the stare of even the least of the streetlights. Oh, even the blind glare undoes me. Somehow, Now I'm full of myself too. Though I look a lot like Shadow.
Hello, my name is Eric Ladelfa, and I'm an old friend of Daniel David Moses. I first met Daniel back at York University at a party in residence back in 1973. We've pretty well known each other since that time. I still have friends people he introduced me to back then. Some names you might know, like Beverly Yap, who started Cahoots Theatre Projects years later, and Sally Clark, who's a playwright now in Vancouver. Yeah, and his first book of poems, Delicate Bodies, has, whoops, not a very good picture, has drawings by me and photographs in it. Very small, low budget production there. Back in 1991, yeah, I worked on the sets for Big Buck City, many night shifts there, and into all productions of Almighty Voice and His Wife, and I was so happy that that there was a production back in the fall of 2019, because by the summer of 2020 Daniel had left us. So I'm so glad that he was involved in that, and he was so happy, and it was really a good time. Anyway, thank you very much.
"2:30 and we're almost done. I understand we have one other case, unusual case, one concerning David McLeod.
Yes, Your Honor. His name was added just this morning, David McLeod.
Mr. McLeod, come to the stand. What's he charged with?
There's no charge.
No charge?
There's nothing here, Your Honor.
Then why is he being held? How did the prisoner come into our custody?
2 soldiers and a civilian brought him in.
For what reason?
Said he was a Jap soldier, Your Honor.
Jap soldier? Incredible. A Jap soldier who speaks English? Who is representing the prisoner?
I do, Your Honor. I'm Walter Johnson, Secretary of the Council at Cape Croker.
Your relationship to the prisoner?
He's my brother. He doesn't speak English or Indian, so our chief asked me to speak for him on his behalf.
Why is he looking at me like that?
He just wants to know who you are.
Mr. Johnston, we need proof. A notarized affidavit that establishes that the prisoner is who he says he is.
Our chief has the affidavit, Your Honor.
Is the chief present in the court? I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, but I cannot accept this affidavit as it is. Your signature, Chief, invalidates the document. As you ought to know, Indians have no standing in court. Is there anyone else from Cape Croker present in this court this afternoon who might have this standing?
Father Howitt, Reverend Bergness, and Mr. Tufnell, the agents, are here, Your Honor.
Call Mr. Tufnell to the stand. You know the prisoner?
Well, yeah. Yes, Your Honor.
Well, tell the court.
The name is David McLeod. He's a member of the Cape Croker Band, 24 years of age. He's a Mongoloid boy. He's also known locally as Crazy Dave.
You are dismissed.
But... Okay.
The court orders David McLeod's release into the care and custody of his mother. This whole episode beggars belief. This poor soul, this Indian, a Mongoloid to boot, has been held in custody without due process. I will not allow this miscarriage of justice in my court. And who beat up this man? That man, if such a person can be called a man, ought to be charged and horsewhipped. Court is adjourned.
My name is Carol Roundtree. Daniel and I were friends for just about 40 years, starting in the early 1980s through my work as a board member with Native Earth Performing Arts. We shared a passion in the creation of theatre and started to attend events together that included a great number of fundraising parties and opening nights and great theatre, of course. I convinced him that he needed a website to create a higher profile. I managed the contents, and that in turn allowed me to probe over dinners about what he was up to. Anything new being published I should know about Dan? Any readings or productions in the works? He didn't offer the information easily, and I would take notes and gather the details later to post. That went on for about 15 years. I believe that one of his most significant contributions is co-editing with Terry Goldie of 3 anthologies of Native Canadian literature in English, beginning in 1992, and the 4th anthology with shared editing duties including Armand Garnett-Ruffo in 2013. That project represents a 21-year commitment to the development and historical legacies of Indigenous writers in Canada. He enjoyed many contemporary influences, The Simpsons, The Triplets of Belleville, TIFF films shown during the day. He really disliked crowds. His music taste ran from Jamie Cullen and Leonard Cohen to Jeremy Dutcher, and his home was filled with magazines from National Geographic, Azure, Geist, and Sci-Fi. He greatly admired the works of Shelley Nero, his publisher Barry Callahan, the poetry of Louise Bernice Half, modern stage theater in Sohei Parsa, and his beloved Pauline Johnson. He always came back to her, his hometown heroine. And in normal times, we would be here, the final presentations by the CIT students and grads, to witness their progress and pathway into the world of the performing arts.
Boozhoo, Boozhoo. I'd like to start out with one of them stories my grandmother Rosa used to tell, when she still told stories. It seems to me that also, if I heard it right, they made a movie out of it a while back now, so it won't seem so far-fetched to you. Of course, they put white people in their version. The Starman, starring, was it one of them Bridges boys? Story still works, even if you mess up the details. This happened a long, long time ago. 500 years back. And it happened at a village, a big one of 600 folks. A summer place where they came together like we've got along the shore. A flat place, good for dancing. Hey, it might have happened here. They had a big time of it there back then. One morning, in the early mist, still on the bay, a couple of them climbed up on the escarpment. A couple of boys, I'd bet, looking for something to do. Trouble. Maybe strawberries in the meadow. They poked around for a while the sun got higher up. It was a bit late in the season for berries. And then off in the distance, they saw someone sitting on the ground. It was a man, a stranger to them. So they headed over there to see who it might be. But the man, he put up his hand before they got too close. So they stopped and just looked at him from across the tall grass. "Hello," he called. "Hello, who's there?" "It is us," said the first boy. "I'm Fred, and this here's Jim," the second boy said. Yeah, you're right. Of course, those weren't exactly their names a long time ago. They be something in Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, but just go with me on this. Hello, Fred. Hello, Jim. Sorry, I wasn't sure. I don't see too good. You blind? Said Jim. Don't be rude, whispered Fred. Not exactly. I'm just not used to how bright it is here. I don't belong to this land, said the man. Figured as much, said Jim. I would have remembered. The man was real good looking, somehow clean and shiny. You from up north? Asked Fred. No, said the man. I fell from up there last night. Up there? Jim repeated. You mean the sky? Asked Fred. As if, laughed Jim. The man nodded. So I'm here for now. My sister, said Fred. My sister, she said she saw a star fall. Yeah? You're not hurt, are you? Said Jim. That's a long ways. The starman smiled and shook his head. You could come stay with us, suggested Fred. Where would he stay? Asked Jim. We got room, said Fred. There's plenty of food. We got shade, he said to the starman. You could rest your eyes, too. So that afternoon, the boys brought the starman home. Fred's mother fed him, and Jim's father talked to him, and the starman laughed and seemed even more good-looking, clean and shiny as, yeah, I guess, a star. Fred's sister kept looking at the starman, and once he looked back at her, and she blushed and turned away. He told him how good the country where he lived was. A land of stardust, maybe? That everything up there was good. He told them how he'd been out running and suddenly a hole had opened up in the ground and in front of him, and before he could stop, he fell in and fell down. Was it the same day? Or maybe it was a couple of days later? You know how the days in the summer just go on and forever and ever. One day, soon after, at sunset, he looked up at the sky. He said to Fred, I'll be going back home soon. Something will come down to take me there. And just after midnight, it came. The starman looked up. It's coming. None of the people could see anything for a long time. Then Fred, he saw something like a bright star shining high up. The other people only saw it when it finally came down to the ground. And the most beautiful thing ever seen in this world. The starman stepped into it, and he rode it back up into the sky.
Hello everyone, my name is Janie Lozon and I'm coming to you from Tiohtià:ke, which is the unceded traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and I'm here to talk about Daniel. I first met Daniel in the late 1980s when CBC still had a radio department, and Daniel was writing a series of short radio plays for CBC. I realized right then and there that Daniel was an incredible craftsperson when it came to words. My next intersection with Daniel was the opportunity to play White Girl in his play Almighty Voice and His Wife at the Great Canadian Theatre Company in Ottawa, the world premiere in the early 1990s. I can say without a doubt that Almighty Voice and His Wife is my most absolute favorite play in the whole entire world. I think it's a masterpiece. And what I loved about Daniel, while not a man of very many words in the room, the way that he would watch, listen, analyze, and then transform all that he saw around him into these incredible poems and incredible plays was the heart and soul of who I knew Daniel to be. I was thrilled to be able to direct Almighty Voice and His Wife at Soul Pepper. And in my conversations with Daniel, he said that the biggest wish that he had was that the play would be recognized with some Dora nominations or a Dora Award, and that's what we were able to do for him. When the award nominations and the award win that Ken McKenzie received for set for the play came out, I emailed Daniel and I said, "So we did it." And all he said back was, "Yes, we did." And then a couple of weeks later, he passed on. But I'm just so thrilled to be able to know that we were able to accomplish that dream that Daniel had, that the play was recognized, that the work that we created was extraordinary and beautiful, and it was all because of Daniel's incredible talent as a writer. So thank you, Daniel, for all that you gave me, all that you gave the world, and all that you will continue to give through your work. Miigwech.
Daniel David Moses was from the Six Nations Reserve of the Grand River like myself. He was a proud Delaware, and he was proud of being from here. I knew of Dan in high school. He rode the same bus as I did, but I never got to know Dan until 1993, when he and I went to Banff at the same time. He let me take photos of him, dressing him up like the Phantom of the Opera. In 2003, he, Elizabeth Hill, and I went to Hiroshima, Japan to attend the peace ceremony. It was hot and humid. We spent 10 days together. We went to museums and Hokkaido in search of Ainu people. He and Elizabeth were looked at as tall. People would stare. We found the Poets' Garden Tokyo. We searched for the Kabuki Theater as well. He won the Aboriginal Arts Award from the Ontario Arts Council in 2015. He was most proud. Dan liked to have fun. I would meet him in Toronto and go to a movie, look at art, and have dinner, and then take a train back home. In 2004, Dan took a teaching job at Queen's. I didn't see him too much after that. He was a good friend to me.
Daniel, would you kindly stand so we can see who you are?
He was thoughtful and kind and always had something to talk about. Sometimes I didn't know what he was talking about. I'll miss you forever, Dan. Onagawaki.
Even the lights going slow. Did its own heat get to it the way it got to you? Does it linger there in the west for the same reason you do in the water long after the other boys got out and dressed? Is it as thoroughly tired as you are after today's harvest? Does it want only to rest and to have the heat that aches in its skin thin and desist? Is that why it's pressed close to the current the dark is? And why that light, like blood in the sky beyond the other boys' heads, now shifts towards the hue of bruises? And is there some other light, one the current can't get at, one the current gives rise to, full and flushed and new as this heat inside you? And does it come on the eastern horizon as some comfort to know you don't have to go through tonight's dark alone? You see now how the going slow is done.